Today, I'm sharing something deeply personal. A few weeks ago, I had the honor of delivering my mother's eulogy. I never intended for it to become a podcast episode, but so many people told me afterward that it wasn't just a eulogy, it was a message about faith, perseverance, purpose, and legacy. If you're grieving, raising a family, facing adversity, or simply trying to leave the world better than you found it, I pray these lessons from my mother's life encourage you as much as they have encouraged me.
Man, this is tough here. This is tough, but we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. So let's start out with Matthew 25th chapter, 23rd verse. The Lord said, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord." Amen. Amen. Mama know how to apply pressure on me. I don't know what it is. Shunsa didn't get this much pressure. Yes, Shunsa was the angel. I was just something else. But this is one of the hardest pressures she ever put on me. She had told me she had got obituary together. And she said, "I got you down to do the eulogy." I was like, "Mom," I said, "You know your nephew is the pastor, right?" She said, "But I want you to do it." I said, "Now, you know it's going to be hard on me." I said, "And then if it don't come out right, it's on you." So, Mama had multiple phrases and names she was called. She was called a preacher's best friend when she's on that piano and they're going to them hoops. She was called Shouting John from that Shirley Caesar song, "Hold My Mule." Mama would shout anywhere. Mama shouted at a church conference, not a preaching conference, the conference where y'all talking about business. Adja remember that because Adja said, "Good Lord, I ain't never seen nobody shout at no conference." Mama was called by Aunt Sadie the baddest alto singer in the land. Y'all remember them Sherman sisters, don't you? Yeah, you couldn't do nothing with that. And she was called a spiritual mother for single mothers. So out of all the things she was called, I'm going to kind of angle this thing where her passion really was. And it was towards single mothers. 50-something years ago, Mama met Daddy. Mama got pregnant by Daddy. Daddy got a ring, engagement ring. He went down there on Sherman Lane to ask Mama to marry. Well, he went down there, he got ran off Sherman Lane. Then he went on with his life, Then almost 3 years later, Mama was dating another great man called Bobby Mays. That's my sister's dad. She got pregnant by him. He got a ring. Went down on Sherman Lane and got ran right off of Sherman Lane. And when I hear that story, I said, man, one of y'all should have just picked Mama up and took her to Terry Shopping Center and proposed to her. Might could have got it done then. But everybody went their separate ways, separate lives, and his mom is a single mom with me and Shansi. Mama, she worked. She worked more than one job sometimes. She went to college, played for 7 choirs in one church. Now, how did one church got 7 choirs? One musician. Y'all know how many church rehearsals y'all got to do, choir rehearsals y'all got to do, how many choir anniversaries, you know how y'all used to do back in the day, how many choir rolls y'all got to buy? How y'all burning up all these lights because y'all in here rehearsing all the time? But I remember it wasn't easy being a single mom. I remember one time Mama came and she cooked 2 pieces of chicken. And she fed me and Shansi. Now I looked at her and said, "Mom," I said, "you're not going to eat?" She said, "No, I had a big lunch today." I knew that wasn't true. There wasn't enough food in the house. Mama wanted what she wanted in life, and she was not going to let you push her around. I remember when she went to college, she graduated with honors. What's that called? What do I call it? So magna cum, what? Yeah, magna cum laude, what's it called? It? Yeah, I don't do school like that, So this job promotion came up, and she applied for it. She had the education, the college degree, and she had the tenure. Well, they gave the job to somebody else that didn't have no college degree and none of the tenure. Mama felt some type of way about it, telling the ladies in the office, I'm going to talk to the boss. They said, you better not do that because you know he mean. He may fire you. Mama said, I don't care. It ain't right. So she went in there and talked to him. And he gave her some bull story. Mama looked at him, said, I quit. Mama came home. I said, Mom, how's your day? She said, I quit. And we was already struggling. I'm like, Mom, how you quit? She said, I quit, that's how. And she told me, said, boy, let me tell you something. Don't let nobody ever devalue you. You better know your worth in life. And you better get what you deserve. So about 3 weeks later, the lights went out. Mama laughed. She laughed. Mama laughed and said, no, they didn't. I said, yeah, they did. Mama laughed about it. So don't you know sometimes in your darkest moment, you got to still laugh? Don't you know in your darkest times, you still got to find joy? Mama said, y'all wait right here. Keep this door locked. I'm going to figure out how to get these lights back on. So she left. She came back. She said the lights will be on in a few minutes. The lights came back on. So we're still struggling a little bit. And my mom had this way we can just communicate. I could talk to her about anything. You know, that's one of the important things you got to understand in life. You got to have this open relationship with your kids and let them voice their opinion and talk to you about stuff. You know, I don't care how stupid it sounds, because I did something stupid. I went in Mama's room. I said, Mom, things getting tight around here. And I know some guys down the street that I'm going to go down here and I'm going to sell some drugs. Now, I ain't going to do it for long, just to get you a leg up. That's all I'm trying to do. That's what they all say. Mama looked at me and said, boy, I am so disappointed in you. She said, where's your faith? She said, God got us. She said, ain't no son of mine going to sell no drugs. And as she was talking, I started feeling bad. I said, Mom, I'm tripping. I said, I'm sorry. I said, I'm not going to do it. But one thing about Mama, she'll capitalize on you in a minute. She capitalized on that statement I made, even though I repented and said, I'm sorry. She said, you got to get out. I was like, Mom, I said I was sorry. She said, you got to get out. And I know what she was doing. She said, I'm going to capitalize on this. If I put him out, then I ain't got to figure out how to feed him. I'm going to let somebody else feed him. That's how Mom is. She packed my clothes and dropped me off at Aunt Sadie's house. I stayed there about 2 weeks. Then she came back to get me. But then Mama had this opportunity at the bank that she was applying for downtown at the corporate building. She felt prideful of that. She got the job. They had to run her credit and all that kind of stuff. Everything was fine. She got to the bank and she was talking. She said, hey, I want to buy this house I saw in the Valley Brook subdivision. It's a split level house for me and my kids. I want to be a homeowner. Well, she went to the bank that she was working for the loan. The manager came out. The manager said, you know, this is going to be risky. We can't do it with you raising these 2 kids. Mom said, all right, y'all going to lose some money. She said, I'm going to get this house, and my father's going to help me. So Mama went and found finances somewhere else and all that kind of stuff, had to do things all over again. The next thing I know, we moving into this house. Mama got access to this house before anything was even done. She had them got the deacons over there at Lounge Hill Church, moved us out of this one house into this house. And I asked Mom when we was in the house, I said, Mom, I said, how you feel to be a homeowner? How, you know, everything? He said, well, the deal ain't went through yet. I said, what you mean the deal ain't went through yet? She said, they're still asking for this and asking for that. I ain't even got the closing and all that stuff. I said, what if the deal fall through? She said, well, what is your faith? She said, I've been teaching you faith all your life, and you still ain't listen. He said, no wonder you wasn't good in school. You don't listen. So a couple of weeks went by. The realtor came in the house when everything was done, the closing and all that kind of stuff. He came into the office Mom was working at, and he was dangling the keys. He said, Miss Sherman, your faith got you through. He dangled the keys, and then you know Mom already had the keys. So we moved in the house. You know, we're living there. Mom was working and doing everything she was doing, priding herself on what she has earned and what she has done, you know, living in a better community and things like that. But I'm going to go back to one thing. I missed this point. When the realtor came into the office with the keys, the manager that denied Mama said, how did you get this house? Did your daddy help you? Mama said, no, my daddy ain't helped me. She said, but you said your father was going to help you. Mom said, that's where you got it twisted. I wasn't talking about my biological father. I was talking about my father in heaven. So we went on, moved in the house, we living there, everything's good. Mama worked a lot, did a lot. One night, I heard Mom in the bed screaming. I ran back there to see what was going on. Mama had a breakdown. She had a breakdown. Then she started dealing with anxiety and panic attacks and stuff like that where she couldn't even work anymore. She had to go on disability. That made her depressed because she prided herself on grinding every day. You know, she prided herself on getting up, going to work every day. And she got to her lowest point. But don't you know when you're at your lowest point, God has a ram in the bush? Mama was at her lowest point. Then here come Daddy again. Mama called me one Sunday. She said, I had to go to the Pastor Barrett's church and play for the male choir because the musician was out sick. And she said, when I got over there, guess who was up in the choir? I said, who, Mom? She said, your daddy. And then she said, I looked up in that choir and I said, look at Toby up there, knowing he can't sing. I said, yeah, Mom. I said, I'm on my way to his house right now. So I got to Daddy's house, and Daddy said, yeah, I saw your mom today. And this and that and the other. I said, yeah, she told me. He said, well, invite her over here for dinner. I said, okay, I'll call, see if she'll come. So I called Mom. So Daddy wants you to come over here for dinner. And she came. And I remember you cooked ribeye steaks that day. So you got together and they reunited. And through the whole thing, you know, Mama was torn. I mean, you know, she's on fixed income and all this stuff and still got bills to pay and still want to live life, right? So Daddy said to Mom, and you made a promise and you kept it. You said, if you marry me, you won't have to worry about another bill. That's a king now. That's a king now. See, everybody had this terminology, I need somebody to hold me down. But you need somebody to hold you up. So they had to figure out what house they was going to live in. Daddy's house on the other side of town or the one in Valley Brook. They chose the one in Valley Brook. Because I think they want to be close to the grandparents because they was getting elderly and getting older. So then Daddy came into the house. And first thing he did, paid the whole house off. Mom always bragged. Said, if something happened to your daddy, I don't know what to do. I don't know what bill coming to this house. I said, you better start looking for him and looking at him because I ain't going to know what to do. I remember one time when I left out of town, I had an opportunity with a career. I left out of town. It was the hardest thing I had to do. I had to leave my mom, had to leave my church, you know, leave this beautiful city of Greenville. But I knew I had to take this opportunity because I want to put myself in a position where my mom would never have to worry about anything again. So God blessed me in that area. So I used to come home on Mama's birthday and Mother's Day and just take Mom shopping. So one time I came home. I said, Mom, you want to go shopping? Where we going? First place you want to go is George's Bootery. That's her church store. That's where she get her stuff to wear to church. Then we left George's Bootery. She said, take me by Burlington's. I need some makeup. I said, well, Mom, won't we just go to the mall and get to a higher-end store? And they got a whole line of makeup, and you got the people in there that can tell you and educate you on it and all that stuff. She said, okay. So we get to the mall. All this makeup, I don't know which store it was, all this makeup that where the lady was talking to her, and she was getting excited. And she looked at me and she said, what's my limit? I said, Ma, you ain't got no limit. I said, you didn't have no limit when it came to raising me in Shunson. You ain't got no limit now. Mom said, boy, I'm finna shout all over this mall. I said, no, we ain't doing that. I said, we ain't coming here like we ain't never had them before. I said, you all right? she was like, yeah. I said, okay, just take your time. Take your time. So Mama health started declining a few months ago. And it was a road that I could never imagine because I know it's hard. It's hard on Shunson. She's in Texas. Hard on me because I'm 4 hours away up in Durham. But I want to thank the family, everybody who's been there helping Dad through this whole thing. Daddy called me one day. He said, the hospice people told me that I got to put her somewhere, that I need to put her somewhere. He said, because they're saying that it's too much for me to bear. He said, I want you to talk to your sister about it. Y'all get together and tell me how you feel about it. So I called Shunson, told the situation. We was in agreement, like it's too much is too much, So I told Daddy that, then called him back the next day. I said, Dad, you call the hospice people and they're going to do something, Mom, take her somewhere? He said, man, I can't do it. He said, if she's going to leave here, she's going to leave here in her house. I said, you sure about that? He said, yeah. So I believe, Daddy, that God is telling Mama, well done. For every challenge she has overcame, well done, my child. For loving the kids the way you do, well done, my child. For the way you loved your husband, well done, my child. For the way you served in the church, well done, my child. The way you mentor single mothers, well done, my child. And the way you served me and trusted me, well done, my child. Take your rest. Take your rest. Because you've done everything I've asked of you. Do you know the most powerful thing you can do in life is do what God asked of you? People want money. They want stuff. But if you do everything God asked of you, then he'll add everything to you. Now back to you, Daddy. You always tell me how proud you are of me and how proud you are of my accomplishments. But I'm going to tell you, don't be proud of me yet. I got one more big accomplishment I got to do. And that's to be the man that you are. You have held this thing down flawlessly with Mom. Flawlessly. And the message that Mama would say now to single mothers, make sure you got a relationship with Jesus. Keep the faith no matter what. Don't give up. Keep striving to be better. And lastly, make sure you know your worth. Don't you settle for anybody or anything. Know your worth. That's the life of Geneva Sherman Sizemore. Thank you for tuning in to Real Talk with Reginald D. If you enjoy listening to Real Talk with Reginald D, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. See you next time.